Hello, everybody, and welcome to Taking Control, the ADHD podcast on rashpixel.fm. I'm Pete Wright, and right over there is Nikki Kinzer.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Pete Wright.
Hi, Nikki Kinzer. Happy ADHD Day to you.
Happy ADHD Day. Happy Organizing Day. It's
part two. Very excited about that.
Yes.
We are going to be talking about, in a minute, we're going to be talking about sorting and purging, the second step in the organizing process. Very excited that we're taking this on. Before we do that, head over to Take Control ADHD. You can get to know us a little bit better. You can listen to the show right there on the website, subscribe to the mailing list on the homepage right there, and we'll send you an email every time a new episode is released. You can also connect with us on Twitter or Facebook at Take Control ADHD. We have a question, a listener question, which I'm eager to talk about, but I have a safety update today.
Oh.
Are you ready for this? It's brief.
Okay.
Safety update is thus. Just a couple of, I think a week ago, probably should have talked about this last week. Maybe it was just this week. A new collection of email addresses has been exposed, and it's a big one. 2.2 billion stolen usernames and passwords, 773 million mail addresses and passwords just landed on the net that are new. And I checked my handy-dandy 1Password in the vulnerable passwords section and found a new 46 of my passwords have been exposed. And so it was time to change them. And so I am telling you all, if you're not using a password vault like 1Password that has a connection to a service like haveibeenpwned.com, then you should be doing it. And if this is just another reminder to get your password situation in order, it's like leaving your keys to your house on the front porch of your house and then going inside and locking the door. That's what is going on here. You've got to get your passwords in order. Every website should have a different password that you don't know, that is long, that is completely undecipherable. Help get that in order. And Nikki, we should talk because some of the passwords in my vault are passwords that you and I share. So we have some services we need to go about changing.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question? And
yeah.
I mean, maybe you need to edit this out, but when you say that, how do you, when you're in 1Password, how do you know what is vulnerable? Because I'm not seeing where you would get that information.
Well, in 1Password, that's a really great question. In 1Password, there is a section called Watchtower. And if you don't have Watchtower activated, open up your preferences on a Mac. You just hit Command, and that'll open your preferences window. And then you can hit the Watchtower option. And there's an option that says check for compromised logins. And when you turn that on, it will update at daily. It'll check the service Have I Been Pwned, which is haveibeenpwned.com. And that is a service that goes about just hunting the web for email addresses that have been released in these major breaches in the dark web. And so, 1Password does the service of going in and comparing all of your user logins with what has been released on the web publicly. And then it tells you, hey, this is a vulnerable password. This is part of a password that's been compromised. You should absolutely change this password as soon as possible. And that's what you do. You just go through your list and change passwords. Now, I have a total of 645 usernames and passwords in my 1Password vault. And to have 46 of them violated in this last round, 46 new services. That includes my utility company. It includes my electric company. It includes, it includes a lot. LinkedIn, Instagram are kind of the other ones. But my utility companies, those are new breaches to me. So I just please, let's keep our security house in order.
Thank you for telling us. That's good to know. That's a project I'm going to work on today. Good.
It's a project. It's an important one. And
no kidding.
There you have it. Okay. Let's talk about our opening question.
Yes.
Got a question from a fantastic listener. And shall I read it?
Yes.
All right.
But then I want you to answer it. And then I'll add to it.
Well, you're giving me so much to do.
Do you want me to read it?
No.
Okay.
We'll talk about it. Here we go. How do I pull myself out of the avoidance spiral hole? I get overwhelmed. I put off what I need to do. I feel guilt and shame for not getting them done, and then just further avoid having to confront my issues. I have such a hard time making myself deal with difficult situations that I make them bigger in my head and then do my best to hope the world doesn't come crashing down while I avoid them.
Yep.
Is there a reason that you want me to answer this? Should I read into this?
I just wanted you to I just wanted you to go first. That's all. No particular reason.
Everything that we talk about, I sort of read into just a little bit. Oh, well, that's history. That's a lot of history between us.
No reason. No, I mean, I will start with the fact that she's not alone. This is, this is ADHD, right? Right in front of her. The avoidance strategy doesn't work, but it's hard to get out of. So no, I wanted your opinion because you have dealt with this, I'm sure. I mean, we all have.
Well, we call this Monday.
It's Monday.
What we call this one. Yeah, definitely not alone. It's a really hard thing to get over. And I think there are two angles, maybe three. We're going to go with two. And if there's a third one, I'm still talking, then it'll be three. The first one is to remind yourself that you're not alone and that this is part of living with ADHD. It's also part of overwhelm for people who don't have ADHD. You can still overwhelm people that don't have ADHD. And so the avoidance spiral it's a natural condition of humanity, right? Of living in a modern sort of the Anthropocene society or culture. And so, it's something that you have to live with. And I think when you say that out loud daily, say, okay, I know I'm avoiding this. I know it's part of who I am. It's part of my identity. That goes so far to relieve a little bit of the weight on your shoulders, just a little bit of the weight on your shoulders. The second is that for me, it all comes down to the adrenaline push at the very end, right? I mean, I have a pretty good track record of getting things done at the very, very last minute. That's not a great way to live. And it hurts. It's emotionally draining and exhausting, but it's part of kind of my identity that I've come to sort of own and leverage. And at least once I do that and say, this is who I am, then I can work on the accommodations that help me get to the other side of it. And okay, three, that accommodation looks like breaking it down. And sometimes it's what is the least offensive part of whatever I'm avoiding that I can get done in 2 minutes or less. What is the thing that if I know that I'm terrified about a certain project because it's just one giant project, what if I felt like I just had an ice pick and I could just pick off one tiny little thing to get done? Sometimes that's all you need is a little bit of that momentum and everything else just comes tumbling out. So I feel like this idea, like we humans do a great job of making the weight of the world on our shoulders, really heavy. 10 times larger than it really is.
Yeah, right.
I had this conversation with my son last night that I think about this often. He's doing the yeoman's work of a book talk. He has to go in and do a book report. And he's written a great little script and he has a great quote and it's not from the first page of the book. So it's actually like, he read it, which is great. That's always a great sign. Yeah, I have this great quote. It's on page 2. No, you didn't even read the book. Come on, joker. And he comes in and he says, what if everybody's laughing at me? And I said, I'm going to tell you a little secret. Nobody cares. All these students in your class who are watching you, they're picking their noses. Nobody cares what you have to say. Remember that, because that's really important. There's one person who actually cares, and that's your teacher, and she already likes you. So you're okay, right? That should give you the opportunity. That should free you from some of that weight, that anxiety. Same thing happens when you have these giant projects that are on your shoulders. Unless you are, you work in NORAD or something, and you have the keys to the big red button. Likely, you're giving yourself too much control, too much authority to let other people fail, and it's just fear. It's just fear and anxiety, and you can walk out of that. It'll make everything easier to do once you get to the other side of that part.
I love that. Yeah. And the only thing I have to add is that, when it's sort of like we're avoiding this for whatever reason, right? There's so many different reasons that you could be avoiding something. It could be avoiding a conversation, a project, a task, whatever it might be. But when you're sitting in that avoidance, that's like the worst anxiety pool ever. Right?
Truly.
Because you have the weight on your shoulders. You're worried about the future. You're worried about the past. It's so anxiety driven that it's like, when you don't make a decision, that's making a decision. That place of indecision is just an awful place to be. And I think that if it's a conversation that you're trying to have with someone, or you have to apologize to someone, I know it's uncomfortable and it's going to take a lot of courage to pick up the phone or whatever you need to do. But I have to say, I bet once you're done, you're going to feel so much lighter and be able to move on from it and free that space in your brain to pay attention to something else. And hopefully that is going to be less anxiety driven.
Yeah.
But that's the only thing I have to add is that where she is or he is just a really ucky place to be.
Yeah. It's really gross.
And so how do we get out of there? How do we get out?
The ADHD podcast is brought to you by you. The reason we can do this show week to week, year after year, is thanks to the support of you, our listeners, at patreon.com/the ADHD podcast. Your direct support pays for the resources we use to keep this show going after so many years. But today I want to talk about emergent behavior. We've talked about this on the show. It's this mix of outcomes that springs forth when you put the right ingredients together. And that is what has happened to this group. An example, the ADHD study hall. These amazing people hold each other accountable for work sprints. They use Zoom, they get on video with each other, and they keep themselves motivated. They keep each other motivated to study, to clean and organize, to learn Hebrew. Like, they do some amazing things together. Nikki and I didn't set this up. This is not something that we put into place. It just happened because this community is full of dedicated and inspired people who want to see one another succeed. I find this deeply moving every time I log in. After a long weekend dealing with sick kids, I come in on Monday morning and see how well these people are taking care of one another. This community is here to help, and we hope you'll give the ADHD community a chance and support the show at the same time at patreon.com/the ADHD podcast. You are what makes listener-supported podcasting like ours work. With a few dollars a month, you can help guarantee that we continue to grow the show, to add new features, and invest more heavily in our community. Get started again at patreon.com/the ADHD podcast today. We have some very quick follow-up that surprised me. Can I do this from last week?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, please.
This comes from Ellie, who's in the chat room, and Ellie said something that I found it surprised me, but it warms me too. We talked about Marie Kondo a lot last week on the show, and I said that one of the things that even though the Marie Kondo thing has it's impacted me positively, it's helped me get some things done in a new way. She says something really interesting that when I said that Marie Kondo's style of just pour everything out on the bed and do it all and do all of your purging and storing and everything in one fell swoop. My assessment was that that's not very ADHD friendly. And Ellie says the fact that this system is meant to be done all in one go instead of gradually means I get instant gratification for seeing results, and clutter makes my symptoms worse, ironically. So the focus on de-junking as much as you can up front is making me feel so much lighter, and there are no complicated rules. It's just purge and store. And I love that because, again, it surprises me from an ADHD perspective and demonstrates we're on a very wide spectrum.
Right.
So thank you for that feedback. And, in the Kondo approach to this stuff, it was interesting.
And I think it just confirms why it's so important that we all tweak what we learn, because we all are going to do it in a different way that works for us. So, I think that's great. Good for her. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, so we are talking today about sorting and purging.
Yes.
How do we do it? Step 2. And we should say, as a point of order, you should listen to these in order. If you haven't listened to last week's show, step 1, we introduce the organizing process, and you should start there. So stop right now, go back and listen to that, and then come back.
I 100% agree with that. Yeah. So step 2 in the process that I teach is sorting and purging. And basically what this is it's taking an inventory of what you own, right? So whether you take it all out and put it on the bed, or you go, section by section, it doesn't matter. What we're doing is we're really looking at everything that we have, and we're deciding, what does this matter? How does this matter to me? Is it important? Do I want it? And again, going back to that great question, does it bring you joy?
Yeah.
So it really is just making a decision on what you want to do with this. And the reason this is important I think one of the biggest reasons this is important to clarify is that we usually don't take the time to get organized, right? By the time you want to get organized, it's probably because you have a lot of clutter around you, and something has, you've hit that toleration level.
Yeah, something's broken.
Something's broken, and you're like, oh, I got to figure this out, and everybody has a different toleration level. And so I think it's really important to understand how much is too much for you. So, somebody might think that having 100 books is fine because they have 100 bookcases, or they have 50 bookcases they can put their books on. So not only can they store the 100 they have, they can store more, and that's it's fabulous. Some people may not want any clutter, on their desk. And so they want to be able to have a system in place that can be taken care of at the end of the day. There's no right or wrong. So again, going back to the whole premise that we were talking about earlier, is that you just got to figure out what's right for you. How much do you want to keep without feeling like
burdened,
it's smothering you.
Well, and that's the other side of that is, to look at this, not with what brings you joy, but what causes pain, You bring up the desk, and I'm one of those people that I have to have a pretty straightened up desk, because if I don't, I know that causes me such pain, and systems completely fall apart, and I lose track of everything. I lose track of my sense of time and space and organization. And if my desk has clutter on it, I can't function. That causes me pain. It's not like my, this stack of invoices and receipts is going to, it sparks necessarily joy. Right. There's very little joy in there, but it does cause me pain when they stack up and they're not in a system. If my system falls out of a line, the toleration there is very, very shallow. If it falls out of line just a little bit, I lose it. And I don't like being in that state of losing it.
Well, and I think that, the bottom line is just getting to a point where you're comfortable in your space, so that you can do work and that you can relax in your home, or if you're working, that you can do your work at home. I mean, I work from home, so that's where that came from. Work and home merge for me. But you get what I'm saying. Yeah. And bottom line, my definition of organization, you have to find what you need when you need it. And that is really the core frustration that people have, is they can't find stuff. And so, getting to that point where you're closer to that. So getting started, I think, is something that, again, a lot of times people start organizing because they're reacting to something, and it's probably some kind of negative consequence. So they lost a really important paper, or they ended up getting another item because even though they already had it, they had to buy it again. So now they're losing money. So, you're usually reacting to something. And so if we can get you to do this process before you're emotionally...
Well, I use compromised.
Yeah, there you go. This is going to go smoother. So, think about where you want to start. Get your supplies, whether that's just bags or boxes, or if you want, I always think it's a great idea to have just blank paper so you can write on it to say like what it is. If this is going to be donate, yes, no, if it's going to be a certain category, just to kind of keep it organized as you're going through the sorting. Eliminate the distractions. Put your phone away so you're not tempted to look at, who's texting you or who's emailing you. And that's a distraction. We are immediately going to go and look and see what's happening. And if you don't really want to be in this space right now organizing, you're going to find something else that's more important. So definitely get rid of that. Hire a babysitter if you have young kids. And also know that it's going to take longer than what you expect.
Yeah.
So,
I had some advice from a former manager once years ago who said, especially when I was trying to move into freelancing, who said, take how long you think it's going to last, then double it, and then double that. Right. Double the result. Yeah. And so, that factor, that multiplication of time, I think is a pretty good start. But I think the other trick is set a timer, right? To confirm it. Right.
Yeah, sure.
Let's start testing assumptions and figure out if your assessment of time is rational, because for many of us, it's not. And we have to learn, like Howard, this is the same thing with my wife always knows she's runs a couple minutes late. So she set the timer trick, set the clock trick.
Right.
And that works for her. But we have to do that too. We have to learn how, what our the way we interpret time, how that is different from normative.
Right. Well, and what's interesting is that, again, depending on how much stuff you have is going to determine how much time you're putting into this process, right? The more stuff you have, the longer it's going to take. But it also depends on what you're looking at. If you're looking at old boxes, from your college years or, whatever, you're probably going to get stuck kind of reminiscing. Yeah. Like, oh, wow, I haven't seen this in a long time. I'm going to look at this. And there is no doubt. I just posted a picture, and it's just so funny on my Facebook page of what happens when people declutter. And it's this woman sitting on her bed with this neck, like, one of those pillow neck pillows, and a mask. And she's playing a DS. And it's like all the stuff she's found that she wants to, like, I'm going to try this on. I'm going to play this. And it's so true. We get, kind of sucked into looking at these things. But that's one of the things I want people to be really careful of, is because it does slow you down, and it can kind of stop the momentum, because the energy you had going into it can, definitely die down after playing a couple of games on your DS. Yeah. So with that said, I would just say put those things aside so you can look at it later and just still focus on making decisions and keep going through the space or the boxes or whatever you're doing. But make it fun. Also, I think that sometimes it can be kind of boring, and it takes longer, and it feels like it takes longer because it's not necessarily where you want to be. And so, play some music, listen to a podcast like ours.
Can I just tell you, you should set your podcast speed higher than normal. If you're one of those people who listen to audiobooks or podcasts at 1x speed, try setting it at 1.5 or 1.75, depending on your player. And I find that when other people's voices speed up in the media that I'm listening to, I speed up. Like I tend to move faster. I don't know if that works for everybody. I have not done any research on this, but just give it a shot and let me know, because that works for me. Interesting.
That's fun. Working with other people, working with your family, not only can it be really helpful, they're also being the body double for you. And the person I probably don't want to work with is my husband, because he'll justify everything about why something needs to stay. So be careful with who you work with.
That's fantastic.
Make it the right person. Yeah. Little rewards along the way. I think I've mentioned this before, but this is a great idea. As you're sorting and you're going through this process, have some M&Ms next to you, or drink your, favorite soda or whatever.
A scotch.
Some whiskey.
No, don't do that. Never drink and purge.
That could be interesting. It could go either way. You are going to throw everything away, or you're going to keep everything.
No, you're going to end up sitting alone on the floor, because you'll have thrown out all your furniture and everything that smells like an old life. You're just gone, and you'll be alone crying. So please don't drink scotch and organize.
No. Let's stay with water, maybe.
Right. Stay hydrated. Hydrate and purge.
Hydrated.
Don't drink and purge. Right.
Right. This is actually something, the next thing that I want to talk about is sort of something to avoid. And that is trying to make a decision about where things are going to go while you're in step 2, which is sorting. So one of the things that I've made very clear in my online course is that you do step 1, you do step 2, and then you do step 3. But if you try to do step 2 and 3 at the same time, which is sorting and then also putting it back, it can be really overwhelming for a lot of people. It may not be for everyone, but I can tell you the majority of people that I've talked to, they get stuck then because they're not sure where it should go. And if they have a lot of stuff in their home, it can really be damaging because they really don't know where it's going to go because they don't feel like they have any space for it to even land right now.
Well, and that gets to the issue of, like, let's say you take on a closet. If you're trying to do the sort and purge and then like put back, you're going to naturally keep more stuff, I think, because there's a natural habit to just, I'm organizing, which really means I'm just folding more pristinely,
Yes.
I mean, when we did our closet recently, we got rid of a ton of stuff as a result of doing the purge first and not thinking about the space.
Because then it keeps you focused on just one thing.
Right.
You have one point. And that is just to make a decision whether or not something's staying or going. So it releases some of that stress, I think, for sure. And organizing is stressful for a lot of people. So we want to, try to decrease that as much as we can.
Yes.
Focusing on one space at a time. I've gone back and forth on this a little bit because sometimes, you get bored and you want to do something else. I can tell you that in my experience, when you zigzag and you go from room to room, it's really frustrating because you don't see your progress. You don't remember where you left off. And you may get back into some of those limiting beliefs of what's the point? Why am I even doing this? So I'm still supporting that you work in one space at a time. And one of the things that can really help when you're doing that is that when you notice that there is something that doesn't belong in the space that you're organizing, but you want to keep it, put it in a relocate box. That is probably one of the best solutions I've seen so that people don't get distracted in the other room that they were going to put that stuff in, and you'll deal with it later. So it's not in your current space, and you'll deal with it later. So think about a relocate
other
box.
rooms while you are sorting and organizing are spiders' webs, right? I mean, they're sticky. They want to keep you. They lure you in, and suddenly you're doing something completely different. Yeah,
something very different. Yeah. So. This was the last few tips have really been kind of getting you started kind of in that mindset, but you got to take action, right? You got to do something. You can't just plan all day.
You can. You really can.
You can. But I'm going to tell you the avoidance strategy doesn't work, especially when it comes to sorting and purging. So we got to take some action. And I'm going to go back to what your advice was, is you break it up. You break it up. So if this is really overwhelming for you, don't feel like you have to, take all your clothes out at once or whatever. You can break your spaces up into zones. So just to give you kind of an example, if you're going to be organizing your kitchen, maybe for today, you're going to do just your pantry, and then you're going to do a particular cupboard. You can break it up like that. Go through these steps and just focus on that one area. Same thing like with the garage. I need to take my own advice here.
Mm-hmm.
Just focus on the tools. Just focus on what's in the boat.
What's in the boat?
What's in the boat out of the boat, unless it's boating stuff, and then it can stay in the boat. But I'll tell you, breaking that down really, it helps. It helps to kind of see it that way, because then you're not just looking at everything and thinking, I'm going to shut the door again, which is what I've been doing.
Right.
So it does definitely help you get started. Same thing with the closet. If you don't want to put everything, or if you don't want to take everything out, just do your shoes. Look at just your shirts. Look at just your pants, your dresses. Like really kind of break it down. Another thing that I will tell people to do is kind of work clockwise in your space. Like, so if you're organizing your bedroom, pick a corner of your room and just sort of work, around it. I have a lady that I'm working with right now who has a craft room. And so, everything to the left is all craft, scrapbooking stuff. Everything to the right is fabric. And she didn't want to go through the fabric first. So we just started right in the corner, and she's going to go and do her scrapbooking and like her buttons and all that stuff first. So you can choose whichever one feels better to you. But that's that there's a lot of different ways to do it. And I think that's the bottom line.
There's this real practical kind of decision-making muscle that many of us don't have, and many of us believe deeply that we are incapable of strengthening it.
And that's a limiting belief that we have to identify and really see what it's protecting you from, how it's serving you, and what do you want different.
Yes.
Because you are capable. You can change this. And again, if you're not comparing yourself to, the comparison is kind of the sabotage. If you think your house needs to be, if you think organization is what you see in books and magazines, then you're going to be disappointed. But if you can find a level of, this is good enough, this is just fine, I can function, I'm at peace, then you can certainly get there.
So how do you start building that decision-making muscle?
Make the easy ones first.
All right.
That's what I always tell everybody is you got to make the easy decisions first. And we all have them. So I don't want people to think, but they're all hard, because then what we're doing is we're doing all or nothing thinking. Yeah. We're going to identify that as an ADHD challenge. That's what's happening here. And we're going to break through that. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. You have easy decisions to make. So that's what you got to start with. And you'll know within just seconds, right? Yeah. Whether this is something that you want to keep or not. If you have any doubt, you keep it. If you don't know, you keep it, but you keep moving on. Yeah. That's the biggest thing.
It's, I kind of imagine it, those chess timers, that you see the championship chess players smacking the chess timer. You know how that works?
Never seen that.
Oh, ever? No, it's great. If you see people playing chess in a park, right, they'll always have this chess timer that has two little clocks on it, and you slam it, and it's like the decision. It keeps track of the total play time for each player. Every time the other person plays it, it starts your clock again. And I feel like this is an example of when a chess timer type thing is useful, where you can just smack it whenever you make a decision and see, like, look at the progress I'm making. Look at how quickly I'm moving through these decisions. I have, I've taken care of all my shoes, and it really only took me 6 minutes. Like that surprised me. I built it up much larger than that, and now I've accomplished something, and that creates momentum.
You bet. Absolutely. I love that you say that. Get a little chess timer. Click it.
Get a chess timer. Smack it. Smack it. That goes on it. We need another shirt. Smack it, ADHD.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Well, and something that, once, because it does feel good, and it does feel good to see the progress you're making. And so once you've made those easy decisions, take a step back and look at your space and where you're at and what you've done and how does this make you feel? And do you need to take a break? That's fine. Take a break, right? Because look at what you've done. Look at what you've created. And so, I think it can be a very positive thing. But if it's not at the point where it's good enough for you, then you have to go back to that second sort. And
then you're taking you've already made the easy decisions,
right?
But now you have to face some of the harder decisions.
Some of the maybes.
Yeah.
Right. Because some things are easy to know that you're going to keep them. So keep them. You're not going to, we're not reviewing those things again.
So let's talk about what are the kinds of questions that you ask yourself to help move you through. And again, not get stuck on these questions, these maybe questions that may be harder.
Right. Some of them are going to sound familiar, but then I want to dig in just a little deeper on them. You probably have heard the thing, well, if you haven't used it in a year, you don't need it. All right. Well, that might be true, and that may be an easy way for you to decide. But I want to know, if you haven't used it in a while, what stopped you from using it?
Yeah.
Like, why didn't you?
If it's something in your kitchen, maybe you stopped making that dish. You don't make, bundt cakes anymore. Do you need the bundt pan?
Or you forgot you had it in the first place, and now that you know you have it, you want to use it. And
you're going to go
okay.
on a full 100% bundt diet and
absolutely, and you're going to make bundt cakes for neighbors and everything. I mean, you're going to have a bake sale.
All of my salmon cakes are now bundt salmon cakes.
Yes,
we're going full bundt here at the ADHD podcast.
Yeah. Yes. So, but that's really what I want to know is what stopped you. Did you forget about it? Do you really not care about it? We got to figure out, like, just because you haven't used it in the last year it's not enough for me. I need to know more. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you were to use it again, so say you've decided, yes, I'm going to keep this, then if I was working with you, I would want to know, okay, specifically tell me when. Give me a day, a time, a reason of why you would use this bundt cake. Like,
immediately.
Will you really? Will you really have a bake sale? Are you really going to make a salmon bundt cake? Because that just sounds awful.
You never know unless you try it, Nikki Kinzer.
That's true. That's
true. Go full bundt, all the time.
But what I'm hoping people see is that you're taking it a little bit further. Like, really think about when you're going to use it. And if you really can't see that, then get rid of it.
Right.
What's the worst thing that can happen if you let this go? I mean, really, what are we fearing? Because if we're fearing about something, we're probably fearing that if we let it go, we're going to regret it. All right. What happens if you do regret it? Can you borrow it from somewhere? Can you actually go and buy it again and think, okay, I'm going to keep this time?
If we've learned anything about our own kitchen cabinets, it's that everybody has a bundt cake pan somewhere that they're not using. You can probably get another one easily.
Exactly. So we just have to really think about what's the worst thing. Could somebody else use it more than me? Yeah. Does my neighbor, she just moved here from Georgia. Does she need a bundt cake? Maybe.
She does.
Maybe, because she probably got rid of all of her stuff before she made the big move.
That's right.
And, so we're kind of making light of it. But it really is, important to think, could somebody else use this more than me? Because if it's just sitting in your drawer, if it's just sitting in the back of a cupboard and it's doing absolutely nothing, what's the purpose, right? That's what we have to think about.
I think of it like that, empty. So let's say you get rid of the bundt cake pan. I don't know why you would after all we've built up.
After everything that we've
talked
about.
The full bundt lifestyle, yeah. But let's say you get rid of it. Empty space that bundt cake pan would have been in, empty space is opportunity, right? Empty space is opportunity for growth. Leaving that bundt cake in is hoarding, right? You're not using it.
Yes.
If it's just taking up space, it's you don't need it. You don't want to condition yourself to that kind of behavior. That's huge. That's huge.
Yeah, it is huge. It's okay to have empty space. It does not everything has to be filled. So absolutely. Well, and this last question I would say, is it worth the real estate it's taking up? And that's really what you're saying is, should we, is it worth that space that it's taking in the cupboard? Is it, would it feel better to have empty space there? Would it feel better to have a casserole dish instead? Because you make casseroles more than you make bundt cakes, right?
Well, maybe if you're the casserole lobby.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Few additional tips, and then we're going to wrap it up. All right. Sorting is emotional. And it's a lot more emotional than what people realize. So not only can it be physically demanding, it's also emotionally draining. So I definitely recommend working with other people, whether that's a body double, an accountability partner, a friend, a neighbor, a family member. ADDers are verbal processors. They like to hear the questions from somebody else, and then they like to talk about it. They need to, because that's how they're organizing their thoughts. Plus, you're getting a second opinion from someone else that all of a sudden maybe you didn't think of it that way, and now it's easier for you to let something go. So if this is a struggle, if you really have a struggle of letting things go, work with someone. Mm-hmm. When the easy decisions become hard, and maybe it's not even the easy decisions, but when any decision becomes hard, it is time to take a break. walk away from it, because for whatever reason you've been triggered, you're emotionally drained, and you need to take a break from it. And if you are leaving, for more than just a few minutes, and you're taking, a few days off or whatever, mark where you left off. Put some kind of have a piece of paper together just to kind of say what you did and where you left off. And that's gonna help you be able to get started again. And I think another really important thing for people to understand is that purging is not just a one-time event. It is something that's going to continue to happen even when you go into steps 3 and 4. So it's okay to keep what you need to keep. And knowing that, when you get to step 3 and 4, you very well may change your mind, and that's okay. So I just don't want people to think it's like this one event that, it doesn't have to be stressful. So
I love it. And I love, being able to set for yourself some rules around what you decide to keep and the space. It could very well be that you have this beautiful empty shelf and you decide that one book that you gave away that you thought you were going to give it, you can grab it out of the box. You can put it back on your shelf.
Sure.
There are takebacks in this game.
Yes, absolutely.
Great conversation, Nikki Kinzer. Thank you so much. Step 2. So step 3, when we think about homework for next week, what do you want people to think about?
Well, I think that now is just really picking that space and sorting and purging and going through the process that we talked about today. And then next week, what we're going to be doing is actually talking about how to place things back so that they make sense to you. So you know what? I encourage everybody just to take a few minutes and see what happens. How does it feel to make those easy decisions? I have a pretty good idea. People are going to have a very positive reaction to it.
I think so too. I think it's always easier than you think it's going to be.
Yes.
So there you go. Thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to this show. We certainly appreciate your time and attention. On behalf of Nikki Kinzer, I'm Pete Wright, and we'll catch you next week right here for Step 3 on Taking Control, the ADHD Organizing Podcast.